Justin Sampson from M&C Saatchi Sport and Entertainment, a very warm welcome to the Red Zone. It's good to have you with us. Sports sponsorship, why do you think it is still a good brand option, given that costs in this regard, I would imagine, are climbing through the roof?
2 words: clutter, engagement. If you look at the clutter out there, I still can't understand why people have a 30-second end on TV. You know, so much clutter, so much happening in our lives today. And the second word, engagement. Sponsorship's about engaging people, consumers ultimately, and touching them at a different level. So I think sponsorship is still part of the marketing mix, but it's about engagement.
We'll talk about the
one-on-one interaction.
We'll talk about the engagement strategy in just a moment, which is critical. Otherwise, it isn't going to work. But these days, how difficult is it to make the right choice? In other words, to match brand against sponsorship property.
Look, there's lots of opportunities out there. So is it a team? Is it an individual? Is it, a brand that you want to be associated with? So lots of choice. I think certain sports are cluttered without a doubt. In general, sponsorship is about sport in South Africa. So from that perspective...
And when you say that, it's rugby, soccer and cricket.
The big three.
Yeah.
Rugby, soccer, cricket. That's where the numbers are. That's where the viewership is. That's what people engage with in our country. So depending on the LSM, soccer is probably first. Rugby, cricket, close second, third, depending on the time of year, let's just say. But they do change. And it's all about sport at the moment. But Justin Bieber's just been in town. Bon Jovi's been in town over the weekend. There's lots of other opportunities. So there's a lot of natural fits. A lot of individuals these days about personal endorsements. So I think one of the trends or one of the changes that we're certainly seeing at the moment is people are talking to individuals more and more, which in the past I don't think has been really part of the sponsorship mix, let's call it, in South Africa. So lots of opportunities, lots of fits, lots of risk, lots of reward.
I'm not even going to ask you if you went to the Justin Bieber concert, because you're not going to admit that to me anyway. How do you work out the cost of an association?
It's a return on investment, and it's mostly driven by TV. What is the exposure that you're getting? But I think there's...
So it's a straight numbers game?
Yes and no. Depends where you are in the life cycle of the relationship. Certain brands are new brands. Early on, they might want a different set of objectives off the back of the sponsorship, about awareness, positioning their brand. More established brands, it's about return on investment, about a numbers game, as you say. So there's always 3 things that we look at from a sponsorship perspective. What is the impact on the brand? What are the business opportunities off the back of the sponsorship? And what does the platform allow you to do that normal communication or advertising wouldn't allow you to do? So those are the 3 factors that we'd always look at off the back of a sponsorship.
How do you start developing that engagement strategy? What's the kind of the base level beginning there?
It's that natural fit always. So if you take brand A and they're looking for a sponsorship property, is there a natural fit between their target market and the target market of the sport? So I don't want to use brands as examples per se, but there's a lot of natural fits. This is the fan base, that's our target market. Because the fans are passionate about that brand, how do we associate and position our brand in the same space so that we get that natural fit and that natural alliance between the 2 brands? So there are a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of brands that people are very passionate about in South Africa, the football teams, the rugby teams, etc., etc. So there's often a natural fit. The problem is, once you go naturally into that space, is there clutter? What else is happening in that space? And how do you stand out from other people that are in that space to begin with?
I want you to talk to me a little bit now about this concept called leverage. You talk about, and it's a nice turn of phrase, companies buy the house, but they fail to furnish the house. In other words, you can get the property, but you've got to do something with it effectively, and with that also comes spending more money perhaps. Optimally, how do you develop a leverage strategy? And I think what you're also going to tell me is that the role of digital in that space is becoming more and more important. In other words, using the tablet, using the telephone.
Yeah. Let's take a step back. I mean, there's rights fees and there's leveraging fees. And a lot of brands will say to us, what is the rights ratio between the rights fee we pay versus the leveraging fee? So starting with that, there's no right answer. Rule of thumb maybe 1-to-1. In America it's 3-to-1. Times are tough from an economic perspective. So let's just say it's 1-to-1. So for every rand you spend on a rights fee, you need to spend leveraging it. A lot of brands sponsor something, realize the rights are so expensive, they don't have any money left over, and therefore they don't leverage it. So the analogy of the house is literally that. The house is the rights you're paying, and if you don't furnish it, you're not really going to make the most of the house. So one of the top banks in South Africa, I was speaking to one of their marketing people a few weeks ago, and they said to me, we do a lot of sponsorship and no one leverages it for us. I said, no, but that's your job. That's why we have sponsorship agencies. It's not for the rights holder, and let's be honest, a lot of the rights holders in South Africa don't have the capacity or the expertise to be able to leverage a sponsor within their space. So that's where sponsorship agencies come in, and certainly leveraging is what maximizes, gets your return. And also a lot of brands, I think, out there sponsor too many things. So less is more, if that makes sense. So rather spend less on rights and then more on leveraging it.
So one good property with great leverage is what you're
correct.
suggesting.
So you could even be a sub-sponsor in a specific category, and the headline sponsor doesn't have a lot of money to leverage that relationship. You're at a lower level, but because you've got more money to leverage, you can do more, and you can create the perception that in that space you are the headline sponsor.
You can own it by perception, in other words.
Correct, without a doubt. And it's not only about money at the end of the day. You talk about the digital space and the social space. Often brands, what happens is they go in and they sponsor something and they only leverage the live events. So if it's a football team, they're playing maybe 20 games a year, and they only leverage it in the build-up to those games or on the day itself. So through digital, you can have a conversation 24/7, 365 that allows you to continue that relationship with the fan ultimately. And I think it's inexpensive as well if you do it correctly. So I think digital's just created a scenario where you can do so much more for less, and that's more engaging on a one-to-one basis. So I think without a doubt the digital landscape has changed the landscape of marketing, and certainly in the sponsorship space.
Very quickly, and in conclusion, your new company, you're entering a very crowded space, M&C Saatchi Sport and Entertainment. What are you going to do differently?
I think it's that word digital that we get back to. Without a doubt, if you look at the traditional sponsorship agencies in South Africa, they've positioned themselves. I think EXP stood out about creating unique experiences off the back of the sponsorship. I think our USP is, without a doubt, how do we use digital to carry on that conversation. So I touched on it earlier, but the live events come and go, but how do you continue that conversation? And the answer is digital.
Justin Sampson, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.